So the Hooffields and the McColts was the episode that we got today. It was a very popular subject for cartoons dating back as far as Bugs Bunny or maybe even farther because of the historical events of the feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys. This is a story that's been pretty popular throughout cartoons for many generations. A story that's been done over and over and over again in one way or another, including most infamously and most recent in our memories in Avatar: The Last Airbender in the episode The Great Divide, which was one of the less popular episodes of the series, so thankfully we didn't go down that path. The path we did go down was nothing new, really, and was pretty much filler for the series. But when you consider the target audience, not the audience that watches the show, but the target audience, you have to think that for many of them, what was predictable or cliche or filler was probably actually their first time being exposed to this kind of plot setup, so it was all new to them. Out of the 3 map mission episodes, not counting the pilot one because that's a special 2-parter, I feel this was the weakest of the 3. You see, the first time the ponies went off to the map, it was to Griffinstone, where we met up with an old friend of ours, Dilda, and got to reform her on an epic adventure to retrieve a treasure of some kind in a land that we've never been before but have always wanted to go to. The second time we went back to Manhattan, a place that we've only been to once before, and we got reunited with Coco Pomel, another fan favorite that we wanted to see come back to the show. In this particular case, we went to a place that we've never heard of before and encountered characters we'd never seen before. So the excitement of returning characters and returning locations, or the excitement of finally getting to see a location, just wasn't there. In the series overall, it's a little bit above medium, but not quite up to the top. It's better than bad, better than the worst for certain, a great deal better than Princess Fight or a number of other episodes, but nowhere near as great as some of the best things we've gotten. Out of the works of the writers who did the episode, it's also fairly decent. I've had a few observations about these map episodes. One, if you go back to season 4 and play back the sequence when they're singing Let the Rainbow Remind You, you'll notice Rarity bows across from Applejack, Rainbow Dash bows across from Pinkie Pie, and Twilight bows across from Fluttershy. I don't know if it's coincidence or foreshadowing, but these are the same pairs that went on the 3 missions. I find that to be a very interesting observation. Another thing that I noticed with all of the map missions is all of them featured locations that had been run down due to neglect. The entire town of Griffinstone was in shambles because the Griffins couldn't be friends and get along. The park in Manhattan was run down because no one took the time to volunteer to help clean it up, and the Smoky Mountains was run down because the fighting had devastated the environment. So those 2 themes seem to have been upheld throughout the entire trilogy of events. The one thing that wasn't held up was the idea of encountering a character we had met before. This could have been easily solved by adding at least one character we were familiar with into the story to give us a little more excitement. And let's say this episode had given us Trixie, or Flim and Flam, or Flash Sentry, or Set Shimmer, or any number of other characters as the supporting cast who needed help, along with Twilight and Fluttershy helping them out. This had been a Babs Seed episode, or a Brayburn episode, or whatever else. Would the existence of this character have helped boost the episode and make it more interesting? Then hard to say now. If the location had been, say, Philadelphia or Baltimore or Las Vegas, that would have also have given it extra points for us having gotten to finally seen one of those areas, which we're probably never going to see now. If any of these things had happened, would it have boosted the show and made it better? And I think it would have been pretty hard to have topped the Griffinstone episode, because that was an interesting story regardless of what else went on in the other stories. I don't think the feuding families was nearly as interesting, even altered or even left alone, than the whole Griffinstone thing. However, with a few extra touches, it could have stood chance to compete on more equal grounds with Made in Manhattan. Or perhaps with Toto Pomel removed from Made in Manhattan and an original character in her place, it could have also, that move could have also put that episode on even grounds with this one. Without Toto Pomel to drive up Made in Manhattan as a more interesting episode, it would have been less impressive, and that would have put it more on par with the Hooffields and McCoys one. If had the Hooffields and McColts had, say, Trixie, and Made in Manhattan had not had Toto Pomel, then the very presence of Trixie would have boosted it on my rating scale. That's how I feel about those comparisons. Now on with some of the other observations. We got to see Fluttershy with her book club for her animals, and from what I'm gathering, Redwing Hoofs is based on an existing story called Redwing Heights. And I was doodling the word Redwing to find out what Redwing Hoofs could possibly be a pony pun on. Not only did I get Redwing Heights, but I also got just plain old Redwing, which is another book, which could possibly have also appealed to Fluttershy. There was also one called Redwing the Storm, which seems to be a brony fan fiction of some kind, which could have also been a fascinating reference. But I feel pretty well convinced that this was a Redwing Heights reference. It's interesting to know that not only is Fluttershy an otaku with amazing drawing skills to draw all those anime characters, but we also know that she likes books with stories about love in them. Whether or not Redwing Heights is a romantic story or not, I'm not completely certain because I haven't really heard of it. But that's what I'm gathering from what I'm hearing about it. I also get a bit of chuckle out of Fluttershy referring to this as her furry friend book club, and just the way that brings up ideas of the subgenre of cosplaying. Also, a lot of the spoilerly things that people predicted might happen in this episode hasn't happened yet, leading me to think that it's either going to happen in the next episode, or perhaps more likely, the finale. It could also be that some of the things that we heard were not necessarily correct information. Also, Twilight needs new books. This is not the first time that one of Twilight's books has given her wrong information. Back in Griffinstone, she also read a book about griffins and had outdated information on the quality of the location the characters were going to. As they go on their balloon ride, we actually get to hear Twilight recap some of the lessons that she's learned in the past episodes. She refers to ponies telling secrets, and that brings us back to both the recent one where Pinkie Pie knows and the first season of Green Isn't Your Color. We also have her talk about a friend leaving a friend out of some kind of situation, which reminds us of What About This Toward, and probably a few other episodes as well. It was also interesting to see Twilight introducing herself as Twilight Sparkle, the Princess of Friendship, and going on about how she is the Princess of Friendship and she should be able to solve this problem. It seems like when we were in season 4, she was kind of shy about telling people that she was a princess and didn't want to flaunt the whole idea of herself being better than others. Now she seems pretty proud of her new position and feels that now that she has an official title and an official job in Equestria, that she should be able to solve problems on her own without help from others and shouldn't be struggling. It seems that her whole how she treats being a princess thing has drastically changed between seasons, as well as how others have been treating her has also drastically changed between seasons. It was also interesting to hear the one pony ramble on about all of the foods that could be made out of the pumpkins. When he mentioned the pumpkin quesadillas, I just remembered that Twilight has an in-canon fear of them. It was also interesting to see the ponies having this sort of color coding going on with them. The ponies on one side of the feud were all red, and the ponies on the other side of the feud were all blue. So it has a sort of red versus blue thing going for them as well. Getting to see Twilight use the Royal Canterlot voice, or some equivalent thereof, and getting to see her use the freeze time spell that she used in Castlemania. Interesting to see Twilight trying to think of friendship in terms of a mathematical or scientific formula. Either way, the one last thought I have for this is that the series Star vs. the Forces of Evil did this plot a lot better. Mudependence Day was a really great episode, focusing on how the war that history says was good for one side could be bad for the other side. Let me know what you think of this episode in the comments section below.